Hey folks, it's Nate. It's time I got back to the drawing board, and today we're taking a look at Kamen America 2, the latest book from Iconic Comics. Once again with art by Timothy Lim and writing by Mark Pellegrini, and this is another great installment in their ongoing comics universe. Follows up from Black Ops 3, and it is a different direction, I think, for the story so far. We saw this a little bit in Black Ops 3, but now, and of course in the original Common America, but now it really seems like they are drilling down on the character development and working their characters and plot lines across multiple books. Of course, they are building up to a crossover between Black Ops and Common America, so that shouldn't surprise you. But let's dive into what you get for your money real quick. It is, as usual for Iconic Comics, a really good book. It's got a good cover stock. It's got good interior stock. And of course, if you back the Kickstarter, you get this holographic cover, which, as usual, I'm not a huge fan of, but I know people really like, so I don't blame them for slapping it on there as a bonus. Let's talk about the art. As usual, Lim is a great artist. He has this very interesting blend of cartoony and manga styles, and he does a great job with the visual storytelling here. There's a lot of interesting, he always has a lot of interesting background elements. I think Lim is the king of the Easter egg, but he's started to extend that to some of his storytelling. Like one of the villains here has this living clay power, which we kind of start seeing working its way through the background or the foreground of this panel without quite knowing what it is. I like that. There are little elements like that throughout the book that do a pretty good job of letting you know what is coming if you're paying attention. So let's move on to, there is one, and it's a very minor critique, again, that I have for his art, is that his characters do have a bit of a case of same face, and you know what, that's fairly common in all comic book art. I mean, it's very hard to develop a whole bunch of different faces, especially if you're not working from reference material. But there were a few occasions when I saw, I think her name's Vermilion, the new villain they introduced in here, the Clay Lady. And I kind of mistook her for Carly when she has longer hair, as she does in some of these flashback sequences. And it was a bit confusing. Because they have a similar hair color, very similar face, and it might be worthwhile to try and develop a few more distinguishing features. Like I personally would have put a mole on Vermilion just to, maybe by the nose or beneath the lip, something like that, to make it a little easier to distinguish her. Because again, that kind of hair parted to the side, about shoulder length, and a reddish brunette kind of a coloring, very similar. The hair color is a bit different, but it can be hard to tell if that's because of the lighting or something like that. So yeah, it is a little confusing. So that's, again, these are minor critiques. These are nitpicks, because overall, Lim does a really good job with the art in this book. Let's talk about the story. So you may not know this. This is something only you knee-deep in the weeds of Hoosier lore will know. But in 1949, there was a man named Gale Harris who supposedly spotted a huge, maybe 500-pound snapping turtle in a small pond. They call it a lake, but honestly, most things they call lakes in Indiana are ponds or puddles, or it was a body of water, and on his farm. And this was briefly a media sensation. He claimed to have seen it. A couple of people who fished in that pond claimed to have seen it. A whole bunch of things were done in an attempt to actually locate this giant snapping turtle. And it went all the way to the point where Harris tried to use a mechanical pump powered by his tractor to drain the lake. He got most of the way there before the cofferdam he was using to hold the water broke and the lake reflooded. And this was a big deal for Harris. It became a national media story for a little bit. People were traipsing all over his farm for about a month. And they started to call him a liar. He got really down. And he the stress ruined his health, and then the financial investment of not working on the farm or having people run all over his farm eventually bankrupted him. He had to sell the property and he had to leave. And he did all this because people claiming he was a liar and that there was no turtle got to him so much. The damage to his reputation really upset him. Hold on to that for a minute. We're going to talk about it a little bit more. People who have already read Volume 1 are aware that Carly Vanders, the protagonist of Kamen America, lives in Oscar, Indiana. And she actually spends a lot of time fighting giant monsters in and around the Midwest. And if you read Black Ops 3, you know that the supervillain she ran into in her debut appearance, Misha, has joined forces with her. Now Misha is a good guy. Her code name is Kamen Comet. And they are just sort of fighting monsters and trying to figure out what's going on. And her geologist friend is analyzing the mud they're all made out of. And we find out that the PR guy who kind of started Carly's career and who she had a very bad breaking of ways with, Nero Lansky, he is orchestrating all of this. He's trying to make money off of merchandising and PR appearances and stuff like that by having monsters appear that he is hired to have created and then having heroes show up and blow them up. So it's a typical false flag conspiracy theory type of thing. And, you know, I find most of these storylines to be far-fetched when I have to take them seriously. But Kamen America is really a gag series. I mean, it doesn't take itself very seriously, let's put it that way. And this kind of a plot, it doesn't bother me as much in this. The real purpose here is to develop Carly's character because Lansky and his current hired hero, who is Kamen, and also happens to be a school rival of Carly's, who are introduced here in the first couple of pages, Sylvia. Sylvia/Kamen UN is actually taking out the monsters pretty quickly. She's getting a lot of good press coverage that Lansky is orchestrating, and Lansky is bad-mouthing Kamen America and her crew just to, you know, make sure the stock in his own set of heroes is going up. And he's scum, and it works, unfortunately. And Carly gets really down about this. She's distracted. She is not doing her job very well, and her actual job, I mean, which is, of course, a fashion designer. She is the fighting fashionista, but she just doesn't take it very well, and it hurts her ability to fight, to keep her teammates safe, and to protect the people around her. And at the same time, she's ignoring her mail. She's not investigating like she should be. It has a whole lot of bad consequences for her. And she eventually winds up going and talking to her priest. And that is a really nice scene here. It's just a couple of pages in the middle of the book. But the priest tells him, where is it? You have a creative spirit, Carly, but with every boon comes a burden. You crave feedback. It's how you grow. But remember, even he who created the universe rarely receives recognition from his own creation. Fortitude and humility are virtues that the talented learn far too late. Take it as a blessing that you're learning them this early. I thought this was a really great piece of character development for Carly, because while she has found some professional success. She has designed clothes for a lot of the people she knows. She has a fairly successful boutique fashion business, but she doesn't get the widespread affirmation that she really craves. And we see her craving from the very beginning. That goes to more successful and more popular people like Sylvia, who we see here wins a prom award for best dressed because she had a dress shipped in from Paris, even though Carly has designed a bunch of dresses for people who are at prom and was sure one of them would win. And this is writ small, the kind of conflict that we see between Carly and people like Lansky and, again, Sylvia throughout the course of this book. Sure, there are monsters running around and destroying things, but it's really an attempt by Carly to take ownership of her reputation and who she is and how the world thinks of her, which is really, to be blunt, a fool's game. Sure, the people around her take her seriously and acknowledge her talent, and that's all she can hope for. Everyone else is just going to draw whatever conclusions they want based off of small encounters. And that is something she eventually makes her peace with through what I think is, unfortunately, one of the book's weaker moments. There is a flashback series to a page where she remembers her teacher who poo-pooed her desire to be a fashion designer and said she should do, real work. And Ms. Wormwood, obviously a nod to Calvin and Hobbes, and she's a disgruntled person. And it turns out Carly meets her again later in life when she is successful, and Miss Wormwood has unfortunately lost her job. And there's a moment of charity that passes between them. This is all in the first volume, so I'm not going to pull that out and bring it up here. But apparently, Miss Wormwood wrote a fan letter to Carly, not knowing who she was. And I found this to be a bit cheesy. It's a little bit too Lifetime movie for me. But it's one page out of 50, I think, and it doesn't bother me too much. But this is kind of the moment where Carly is turning an emotional corner, so I would have liked it if it was a bit stronger. The story ends with a confrontation with the Beast of Busco, O Scar, and this is a nod to the legend of Gale Harris and Oscar, the Beast of Busco, the giant snapping turtle. And I really like this because not only has Pellegrini worked in a great piece of Indiana folklore, he's done it in a way that ties back into Carly's character arc. Gale Harris's whole ordeal, well, not his whole ordeal, but most of it, was born from the fact that he couldn't stand the fact that the press wasn't giving him credit for what he thought he should have credit for. And that was what ultimately set him back and lost him the farm. And in this battle, we not only see Carly overcoming a monster, we see her actually fighting a personification of her character struggle. And I think that's really great. That is a brilliant piece of writing. And unfortunately, the legend of the Churubusco snapping turtle being so localized, I don't know how many people will actually get it. But I'm a Hoosier boy. I've actually taken part in retelling the story of Oscar in theater, and I really appreciated it. I know there are, if they ever read it, there are a lot of other people in Indiana who will also appreciate that. So one other side plot, a new member of the Kamen band, Kamen Ramen, is introduced. This is Kimiko Kaneko. She is the daughter of a ramen instant chain or instant company, and she sees Carly on TV and idolizes her, so she kind of quits as the company mascot to become a superhero. That's an interesting side story, and it kind of plays on the theme of expectations and living up to them, and not always knowing how to deal with them. And I think that Kimmy is going to be an interesting addition to the team, but I'm not quite sure where it's going, other than the fact that we seem to be assembling the four core elements here, the four Greek elements, with Carly having electrical powers. She probably represents air. Misha is, of course, Kamen Comet, so she has fire powers. And then we have Kimmy with water powers, which makes me suspect that Vermilion will eventually be added to the roster as well, because the great Shonen Jump rule that the one that looks like a villain is actually a friend seems to be in play already, because Misha has joined the team. So I suspect that Vermilion will turn out to be our Earthbender. But I'm not sure where the story goes after this, other than to say that, of course, there's going to be a crossover with Black Hops, as the last few pages promise us, because we see Hair Trigger, Apex Moth, and I forget this thing's name. It's the Russian cryptid that showed up in the first book. But yeah, we are kind of primed for that crossover, and we're also seeing some tension between Lansky and Sylvia that may play out in interesting ways in the future too. So I'm interested to see where that goes. But all in all, I really like this book. I think that Pellegrini did a great job blending the themes and the monsters in here, as I've already laid out, using Oscar as the template for a monster was a stroke of genius, especially given the nature of the story that's taking place in this book. And as always, Timothy Lim did a great job with his art, making it feel action-packed and very expressive at the same time. So there was only one bonus for the base tier of this campaign, and that was this patch. I love patches, as always. And this is the NWA National Waifu Association patch that came with the book. It's a good size. It's great design. And as usual, I'm probably not going to attach it to anything. But what you going to do? I love my patches, even though I don't put them on things. So it's a really good buy for the money, and I recommend you check it out if you get the opportunity. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, there's a like button and subscribe button down below. You can use them as you see fit, and I'll talk to you later.